Now that we know the MLS season is set to restart on July 8th, I know there's going to be some people that probably going to ask me, am I still going to do these review video of the simulated match? Well, probably not, because what's the point of doing reviews of the simulated match when I can actually do review of actual match that is going to take place? And also, I am still deciding what am I going to do with the previews and review for this tournament that is going to be in Orlando to restart the season. Still deciding whether or not if I'm just going to do like a preview and review video every single day, since there's a match happening every single day, or I'm just going to do like one big review and one big preview every time when a group stage match is going to be taking place, which in that case, I'll be doing 3 big previews and reviews of these group stage matches that is going to be taking place. And I'll probably decide that in these next couple of weeks, since the tournament will not be starting until next month, and that it's still a while before the tournament actually starts. I think 3 weeks is still the time from now till when the tournament starts on July 8th. But until then, I am definitely very excited for the tournament to start, because as much as I enjoy doing these kind of review for these simulated match, they're just simulated match. They're not actual result that counts toward the season. And that the good news for all of you, your favorite team that probably are not doing very well in terms of the simulated match, well, the good news is, at least this is not going to count toward your regular season, and that this is just something for fun for us to do while we are trying to wait for the season to return, which thankfully it's going to return in July, and we're actually going to see actual MLS action for the first time in 4 months. But that being said, we have 11 games to talk about in terms of the simulated match, as we are now back from what was supposed to be the international break from last week. And we start off the first match. I need to get this up here. There we go. So we start the first match between Portland and SKC, and SKC was able to bounce back after a relatively rough couple of games where, remember how they were on a hot streak, and then eventually their hot streak got ended against Dallas, and then they lost again last week. Well, they finally bounced back as they win 1-0 against the Portland Timbers. The only goal in this game was come from Felipe Gutierrez, who, again, I wish him a speedy recovery. As you guys probably heard a couple of days ago, he actually undergo knee surgery, and he's going to be out for 7 to 9 months, and that is a huge blow to SKC in terms of him being one of the most influential and one of the most creative players on that team. But in this reality world, he's still playing for SKC, and he got the crucial goal to give SKC all 3 points against a Timber team that, yeah, it's just not been their season this year, is it? I mean, they just continue to struggle this season and continue to sit near the foot of the Western Conference. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is a team that I haven't mentioned a lot lately about the fact that they have been on an absolute tear, but I think I'm going to finally mention it, and that, of course, is the Columbus Crew, who, you know, like SKC, they have been on an absolute tear, but unlike SKC, they're actually charging up the table, and they are actually now finding themselves all the way up into the top 4 of the Eastern Conference, and they got a big victory against bottom feeder Chicago Fire in this game, as they won 2-1 in this. Goals from Lucas Zararin in the 21st minute and Zardes in the 29th minute gave them a quick 2-0 lead in the first half. Robert Baric did try to make things interesting for Chicago by getting one back in the 75th minute, but unfortunately Chicago wasn't able to find that equalizer in the last 15 minutes of the game. As Columbus, again, they are just, right now, I think, besides Minnesota, they are the hottest team in the league right now, with the way that, remember how they were a team that I talked about how they were the underachiever and they keep finding themselves near the bottom of the table? Boy, has things changed ever since they went on this hot streak, and that this just also proves that as long as if you're in the Eastern Conference and you get on a good hot streak going like what Columbus is doing, they are going, or you are of course going to find yourself near the top 4 spot, and they're right now in that 4 spot and really challenging for the top spot of the, well, not just challenging, but in the conversation in terms of that top spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, one team that is in that top spot of the Eastern Conference is Orlando City, and they were able to keep themselves above well, Philly in that top spot as they got a huge 4-0 victory against the Red Bulls. Goals from Dom Dwyer in the 12th minute, and then they had a long period of time where, once again, some of the old habit kind of came back from them, where they had tons of chances but couldn't quite finish. But only this time, the reason why this year they've been so good is that even when they at times showed that old habits of having tons of shots but aren't able to put away, eventually they find a way to put away those chances. And it happened in the 70th minute from Benji Michel, and after that it was basically the floodgate open for Orlando City. Maurizio Pereira would score in the 77th minute before adding another one in the 2nd minute of stoppage time in the second half to basically give Orlando City a big 4-0 victory. And again, Orlando City with this victory, they're still above the Union in that top spot, albeit, as I will mention a little bit later, the Union also got a big victory. So there's technically the Union and Orlando City are once again tied atop the Eastern Conference. But at least the good news for Orlando City is that they didn't lose any ground whatsoever and that they're still at the top of the Eastern Conference. Whereas the Red Bulls, yeah, they are struggling this season. And I'm going to pretty much say the same thing with them, with Portland Timbers. They've been near the bottom of the Eastern Conference and haven't taken advantage of potentially getting into a hot streak so that they can climb up the table. Speaking of teams that is struggling, that is exactly where Toronto FC is in this. So in this Canadian Classic, it was their rival Montreal Impact getting the crucial 3-0 win against TFC, and Toronto is in deep trouble right now because not only the fact that they're just above the red line right now in the Eastern Conference, but look who's right behind them in terms of that spot and about to take over if they don't start winning games. Yep, that's right. It is the Montreal Impact, and they are actually now just 1 point behind TFC for the last spot in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference after getting this crucial 3-0 win. Goals for them in this game came from Sofia Taidir in the 15th minute. Then Bojan would score a brace in the 29th and 44th minute as Montreal, who scored all 3 of their goals to get this crucial 3-0 win in the first half, and they got the crucial 3 points. And as I mentioned, they're only 1 point behind Toronto for that last spot of the Eastern Conference, and that if TFC does not pick themselves up and started to get some points in these next couple of games, they are going to find themselves up below the red line, which it feels like when you look at how their season has been, and especially for the last couple of games where they went from being an inconsistent team to being a team that is starting to struggle, it was bound to eventually happen where they are going to find themselves below the red line in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, moving on, in terms of the next match, is FC Cincinnati. So another team that is been a big surprise and certainly a team that is challenging for the top spot of the Eastern Conference. They got a crucial 2-1 win against DC United, and the reason why FC Cincinnati has been a big surprise and have been challenging for the top spot of the Eastern Conference is because of Jurgen Locadia, who the signing that they made this offseason have definitely paid off, as he's been one of the most lethal goal scored in this league, and he had 2 more to his tally by scoring in the 11th minute and in the 19th minute. Griffin Yao did try to make things interesting for DC, but FC Cincinnati was able to hold on and get the 3 points, as again they are keeping pace in terms of those top teams in the Eastern Conference, and I think they're only about a point away from, well, actually I'm probably going to have to look at the standing to see where they exactly are, but I think they're only a couple points behind the top team of the Eastern Conference, whereas DC United is, like Toronto, going the wrong way in terms of how their season has gone and the standings wise, as they continue to struggle and continue to find themselves well below the red line, and doesn't look like a team that's going to be trying to get back above the red line anytime soon. But yeah, moving on, in terms of the next match, is Atlanta, who is another team that is challenging for that top spot, and they got a 1-0 win against the Houston Dynamo, and the only goal actually came from Joseph Martinez, which, throughout the simulated match that I've been reviewing for the past couple of months, I didn't think that when they did the simulated match, I didn't think that they actually purposely not put Josef Martinez in the team because they want to make it realistic and saying that he's actually out in real life, so that he needs to be out in the simulated match also. But that doesn't seem like it is the case, and it seemed like he finally scored a goal after pretty much gone for the past couple of weeks not scoring a goal, which is kind of very uncharacteristic of Josef Martinez. But at least he finally broke his duck in this case, and that he was able to get the crucial goal for Atlanta to again keep pace of those top team in the Eastern Conference. Whereas the Dynamo, like I said about DC United, they are one of those teams that are just the team that is kind of like the bottom feeders and just stuck in that bottom part of the Western Conference and not really having any point of potentially challenging for those playoff spot anytime soon. But yeah, moving on in terms of the next match is Colorado versus LAFC. And you notice I put Z because my oh my, this was probably one of the most boring match I have ever seen before. And, you know, I know earlier this season I talked about the most boring match was probably the one between the Quakes and the Whitecaps, where that was a game that was kind of like the battle of the bottom feeder, which that one, we expected that to be a very boring match, because when you have two teams that is struggling to get points this season, you know it's going to be a match that is not going to be enjoyable for the neutral. This one, however, I did not see this one coming. Consider you have two teams that definitely has some talented going forward on the attack. The fact that they only muster 4 shots on goal between both of these teams throughout the 90 minutes and drew 0-0, that is a very surprising kind of factor. And that, you know, I guess for the Rapids, at least they got a point out of this game against an LAFC team that usually when you get a point out of LAFC, it's a good thing. Although this year, or at least in this alternative world of simulated match, LAFC is really struggling right now, and that they remain at 8th place, just below the red line in the Western Conference. And there's actually now one team that has started to catch them up in terms of the 8th spot and possibly actually challenging for the playoffs. And I cannot believe I'm actually just said this, but the San Jose Earthquakes, they are now up to 9th place, and they are actually only 4 points below LAFC and only below FC Dallas for that final spot of the playoffs with just 5 points. And, you know, a team that I basically just written off a couple of months back. I thought this team was dead and buried, and there was no way in the world that they're going to challenge for the playoffs. Well, now they're looking like they could potentially do it, and thanks to this 1-0 win against the Galaxy in the Cali Clasico, which featured probably one of the worst goals you will ever seen in a game, and probably the worst moment this season in MLS. They're literally right there in terms of potentially getting above above the red line, which a couple months back I didn't think for once that was going to be the case. And talk about that worst moment of the season. In the 8th minute, Nick DuPois scored the only goal, which was an own goal for the Galaxy. And the reason why I say this is one of the worst moments is, I mean, we've seen that there has been own goals that has been scored in the simulated match, albeit it hasn't happened as much as you usually see in real life. But, you know, what made this own goal so bad was that when Bingham actually saved this shot, DuPois basically decided to try to clear it out of the box, which seems pretty normal because you want to get the ball out of the dangerous area. The only problem is, when he tried to clear the ball out of the dangerous area, he completely scuffed the clearance, and he scuffed it so badly that it actually the ball actually went backwards with the way that he's trying to clear the ball away and somehow find it into the back of the net. I mean, yeah, that was definitely not a great moment for him, and certainly that's probably one of the weirdest goals ever scored in the Cali Clasico history, but I'll take it. You know, the Quakes, at least in the simulated world, just like in real world, no matter how bad the Quakes are or how good the Quakes have, they always find a way to at least get a point or get a win against the Galaxy. And albeit, I'm kind of surprised the fact that they were able to get a row win against the Galaxy, because we usually don't do very well against the Galaxy whenever we play down in Carson. At least this time, that, of course, is the case. And as I said, they are right there in terms of, well, I wouldn't say they're right there in terms of challenging for the playoffs, but they're starting to creep back into the picture. And if they can get a couple more wins and stay in the form that they've been in for the past couple of weeks, or really in this past month, that they have really shown good form to potentially crack the playoff spot, they could possibly get above the red line, which is, again, something I definitely didn't think it was going to happen with the way that how these simulated match looked like for the first couple of weeks. But that being said, I am now going to switch the boards and look at the last 3 games that is going to be happening from this simulated match week. Alrighty, moving on. So, the Sounders, they were this week's recipient of the free win of the week. Although, I will say this, the Whitecaps have started to be a little bit better. And in these last couple of games, not only they were able to get victory, which is something that they rarely done this season, but in this game against the Sounders, they really gave the Sounders all they can handle in terms of getting all 3 points from them. Now, despite that, the Sounders still able to walk out with the victory, and the only 2 goals that were scored in this game from the Sounders came from Nicholas Ladero in the 45th minute, and then Will Bruin in the 88th minute. But again, despite the fact that the Sounders did get that 2-0 win, when you look at how the game went, the Whitecaps, they did have their moments to potentially score a goal, but weren't able to do it, and they really fought hard in this game in terms of trying to give the Sounders all they can handle in terms of getting all 3 points. And at this point, that's what any Whitecaps fan want to see with the team. Like, you know they probably will not be making the playoffs this season, but at least they need to try to fight hard and try to show that kind of passion, so that they can maybe move forward this rebuild that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Even and after this season, it looked like this was going to be a promise that finally this long rebuild that they're enduring is going to start to make some progress. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the most exciting match of this week. This was a back and forth affair between NYCFC versus the Revs, and it seemed like either of these teams were either going to get a hard-fought draw, or the fact that one of these teams were going to get a victory. And in this case, one of these teams did get a victory, and they got it very late in the game. So, in the 10th minute, Christian Pineda scores to give the Revs a 1-0 lead. However, that lead was short-lived, as Maxi Morales would score to tie the game up at 1 apiece in the 24th minute. NYCFC then took the lead for the very first time from Jesus Medina, before Theo Bunbury, literally on the last kick of the first half, was able to tie the game up at 2 apiece as we head into the second half, where, again, the second half was as chaotic as the first half, where both teams had a bunch of chances. The only difference is, the second half, neither of these teams were very, very clinical as they were in the first half, except in the 89th minute, as we thought that we potentially could head to a 2-2 draw. Maxi Morales was able to put away his chances, and NYCFC get a crucial free to win against the Revs, as they now climb up to 6th place and have 18 points, which I believe this is the highest they have climbed up so far this season. And for the Revs, this is definitely heartbreaking, the fact that they could have had a point which would have leveled them with TFC in that last spot of the playoffs, but unfortunately they weren't able to do that because of conceding a last-minute winner from NYCFC. But yeah, we finish up the final match of this weekend with probably the biggest match of this weekend between the Union and RSL, the team that is first place in the Eastern Conference against a team that is in second. And in the end, it was the team in first place in the Eastern Conference that got the victory. And this is very rare to see these kind of top of the table interleague match between, or interconference match between both of these teams, and the Eastern Conference would come up top. It's usually the Western Conference, the one that usually come up top. But in this case, it was the Union that came up top with goals from Elzinho in the 27th minute, and then Bedoya in the 49th minute sealed the 3 points for the Union, who, again, this was a big victory for them, consider they know Orlando City have won earlier this week and that they need to get this huge 3 points so that they can keep pace of them, which they did exactly that. But that being said, let us now move into the standings wise after, I believe we're now 16 weeks into the simulated match. And in the Eastern Conference, we got Orlando City and the Union tied at 28 points, with Atlanta right behind them at 26 points. Then, as I mentioned earlier, Columbus, who has just been red hot lately, are now up to 4th place with 24 points, with FC Cincinnati not far behind with 23 points. And then this is where there's a little bit of a gap between the battle for those top spot in the Eastern Conference to the team that is battling for the last 2 spot in the Eastern Conference. We have NYCFC, who, as I mentioned, this is probably the highest they've been up in the standings, with 18 points in 6th place. Then you got a TFC side that has really dwindling in terms of their form and find themselves just barely hanging on to that last spot in the Eastern Conference with 16 points. Got Montreal and New England currently tied in the spot that just missed out on the playoffs with 15 points. Then you got the Red Bulls and DC tie in 10th place with 14 points. And then you got the Chicago Fire, who I think this is the 4th consecutive week that they unfortunately find themselves at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Looking at the Western Conference, we got the Loons still at top of the Western Conference with 39 points. With RSL, despite the loss, they still are in 2nd place, although this loss not only was a big missed opportunity for them to close within 3 points of the Loons, who this week play against an expansion team. And since, when these simulated match doesn't include these expansion teams, that's why they, of course, are off this week. And that, there was a big chance that RSL would have closed in a gap where they haven't been with Minnesota in a very, very long time. But they weren't able to do that, as that gap is still 6 points between them and the Loons, and that Seattle is literally once again right behind them and breathing down their neck in 3rd place with 31 points. Then you got the Rapids currently with 27 points, with SKC climbing back up to 5th place with 25 points. The Galaxy currently is in 6th place with 23 points, and then FC Dallas currently with 21 points, with LAFC right behind them and right below, still below the red line with 20 points. Then you got the Quakes quickly started to try to slowly climb their way back in contention of playoffs with 16 points. You got the Timbers currently with 14 points in 10th place. Houston Dynamo with 13 points in 11th place. And we round off with the Vancouver Whitecaps still stuck at the bottom of the Western Conference, as it's been pretty much the case for most of this season, with just 11 points to their name. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this simulated match. And again, I think I'm going to do 2 more of these before we are actually going to get to a point where I'm actually going to be doing preview for the first time in 3 months and actually talk about actual match that is going to be taking place, and none of these that is playing in the FIFA 20 simulated world. But either way, until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.